Okay, all right. Board briefing on Wednesday, December 4th. We'll open this meeting at 2 p.m. And we're just going to jump right in and talk about who's going to be the chair and vice chair for next year, because on a regular rotation, it would have been David Yamamoto. And that would make it Paul. However, Paul has told me individually that he doesn't prefer to be chair next year. Is that, I don't mean to speak for you.
Yeah. Based on Aaron's request for the 2026 swap, I'm fine with whatever we need to do to get that to accommodate that.
Okay, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so since I will be the president for AOC in 26, it would be my preference not to also be the chair here at the same time, because that's going to require some travel and other things that may make it just more difficult for me to be present in the room for every single meeting. So I had asked Paul if he would not mind switching with me so that I could do chair this coming year, and then he could be chair the following year.
Okay. Good. Okay. All right. That was easy. Here we go.
I know, right? Trying to keep it short, go to the party. Thank you. I appreciate the accommodation. Yeah, I really do appreciate the
That
accommodation.
makes sense. You'll be busy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to support that.
Concerned that I wouldn't be, as president, I need to be in 26 here.
Yeah. Okay, so then we're going to talk about the board liaison and board liaison discussion. And who wants to start? You want to start?
I have a couple changes when we get to that point, things that just are inactive now that were on my list.
Okay.
Isabel's gonna have us, right?
Oh, lovely, lovely. Please. I think we're done with chair, vice chair. That was easy. Need one of those easy buttons.
So this is the conversation the Board of Commissioners has annually regarding their liaisons for the upcoming year. And the list you have in front of you is where we landed last year, and it's color coded per commissioner. And we usually start the conversation. I don't know if we should start the conversation with Commissioner Olson first, or just.
Do you have I guess maybe open it to the board if you have a preference on how you'd like to walk through this? Don't know.
Well, we know that Commissioner Olson is vacating his.
Yep.
Do you have any parting shots?
Of course I do, but no, not really, but I could tell you what's involved and what's happening, paragraph on each one just quickly. So if you want to do. Okay, so the first one is the EDC, Economic Development Council. And actually I was sit on that currently as an ex officio member because Commissioner Bell is the chair and has been on it. But I was on it, or I go to the meetings and as a representative COPAC, which is the larger economic, what COPAC is. And I had also served on that one for about 10 years as a member. So somebody needs to be on that, and you can do whatever you want, but it's very active. They're meeting once a month typically, and it's got a lot of connections. It's currently got another, what do they call where they, the contest, whatever.
The
Pitch contest?
Pitch contest. Where startups or new businesses of one sort or another offer up suggestions or their marketing program, and they enter a contest, and the winner gets $10,000. So there's happening there. So that's EDC. You can think about that. The Northwest Area Commission on Transportation, that meets every other month, and then there's some online stuff in between. That's a good sized meeting. That involves about 50 people usually, and it's Western Washington County, Columbia County, Clatsop County, and Tillamook County, and it rotates every other month. It's elsewhere. This next week, the last one of the year will be in St. Helens. And so the way it works is COPAC meets in the morning, like from 9:30 or 10 to noon, and then they bring in lunch. And then Northwest Act goes from 1 to 3:30, give or take. And then people have time to get back to their homes. And that's a meeting with ODOT representatives. Sometimes DEQ is there. There's several advisory committees on which Betsy Johnson serves on one of those groups. And so the meetings are always a little more lively than you might expect. And it sets the priorities in terms of major projects for ODOT. And it has, and the counties sit in there too and have something to say about it. And Chris usually attends that one as well, usually online. Sometimes Sarah is online for other matters related to land use and so on. And so you learn about really, really good issues like about they're going to put in front of banks because of 900 and some homes are going in banks. And anyway, those kinds of things. At one meeting, ODOT appeared with a priority of 1, 2, 3, 4 projects for, I don't know, 10 or 12 million. And when the meeting was over, we had to reverse priorities. What they thought was 4 was 1. We just flipped everything around, and there was some logic and rationale behind it. So I see that as pretty important, and you're much better off in person than trying to do it online. So just throw that one out.
And it meets on the same day as Colpack, is that right?
Yeah. You go in the morning as Colpack for a couple of hours, 2.5 hours, then the lunch, and then Northwest Act. And there's a fair amount of people come in, like when we were in Banks, basically the city council of Banks was there. And so there's 40, 50 people in the room, and they really have an interest because Bill Jablonski is there, the ODOT guy. And we're setting priorities for ODOT and for the northwest corner of Oregon. And so it can get a little tense, shall we say, which is good. Then the Northwest Oregon Economic Alliance, I have no idea what that is actually.
So it is a part of the Colpack piece. Colpack has grant funding that they do, and that is under the Northwest Economic Alliance. So it's part of Colpack. And it's seamless because for me, the minutes are the same, the votes are the
Right.
same, the budgets are the same. It just all moves in tandem.
And we do still need some Tillamook County appointments on that particular committee.
Yeah, it is part of that. That does ring a bell. It basically is the same thing, or almost. The Northwest Oregon Works Consortium is basically what we used to call the office or the unemployment office or whatever the terminology was. And this meeting rotates around every other month too. It goes same 4 counties: Tillamook, Washington, Columbia, and Clatsop. And it's pretty active. It gets reports in person from the state economists, and there's quite a bit of information exchange. Usually the community colleges report and they attend on what's going on and what programs do they have and job training, all that kind of stuff. Then Colpack is the larger economic development agency meeting again same day as Northwest Act. And then Lightwave, I think you probably know what Tillamook Lightwave is. It's currently PUD and the county, and it will probably remain that way for a while. We're at a position now where rather than bring in a third party like the college has expressed interest that way, and we've narrowed down 4 or 5 options to really 2. One is to actually go into kind of a suspension mode where we act as an advisory group to maybe a private interest if Astound or one of those, some other organization wanted to buy it out. That's still up for conversation. And the more likely one, I think, in my opinion, is it keeps going like it is, gets through the BEAD process of the large 700 million that the state has, and then it will evolve into whatever happens after that. So maybe nothing happens for a year except the routine business. The other person representing is Todd Simmons, but he told me last night at our chamber dinner that Valerie Folkema probably will take his place, and then we'll need to appoint somebody from the county here. So those are the ones with my color, and the main ones. It's a good group, and what I found that is beneficial is you're there and you're talking to people more or less. You're on the record. But you're really not. If you walk down the hall with a commissioner, you can have a pretty frank conversation about one thing or another. So stop talking for now.
Do we want to go through departments, liaison responsibilities and other things all at the same time, or just? How would we like to split it up?
I think,
I was gonna say, we might be able to make this quicker unless you want to go through it all. I mean, I don't know if this is for my benefit, since you guys already know what these all are, so if I'm fine with all that Doug already has, and there was just a couple other ones that I'm interested in that, you know, you and I had spoken about. So I don't know if you want to go through it, that's fine, but I mean, I just have a couple of things like, oh, wouldn't mind that, but otherwise, I'm fine with what Doug has now, if that speeds the process up, and it's up to you guys. You're the boss.
Okay. All right. Well, there are some discussions to be had about on some of these boards, we like, for example, Aaron and Doug have been regularly attending Tillamook Lightwave in person, and I've been attending online. So there have been 2 of us there regularly, sometimes 3 of us. But I think, are we all, I've always been confused about this. Is there an expectation that all 3 commissioners
Oh.
participate? So we don't have to, but we can.
No, you don't have, it's been basically 2 or 3 when the court was a member. And then the alternate would tune in from time to time. Commissioner Scar's taken a little more active role and has attended a fair number of meetings, and you've listened in, which of course it's a public meeting, but it's basically right now the 2 that are making decisions, and which means you got to have 100% to do anything, yes or no, and it's typically it's been that way. We've had a few questions from time to time, but nothing significant. And I mean, you've seen what the meetings are like. So long answer to your question, it's not at all necessary for all 3 to be there. I think one for sure. And then the other, just so you're up to speed in case the first one has to step aside for some reason.
Okay.
And I've been attending in part because it feels like 2 people making those decisions without additional voices at the table. It feels to me like it's a little bit insular.
Mhm.
And so from my perspective as the alternate, I felt like just in the interest, and we've had alternates coming from, Valerie's been coming as well from PUD. It just creates a larger brain trust at the table. Whereas 2 people feels to me just a little bit small for that big of a decision, particularly the decisions that we have been making over the last 2 years, really with the court deciding to exit the partnership and, you know, the conversations that went with that. And then do we bring in more people? If so, when and how? And it just felt like those were kind of big conversations, which is probably why you've been attending as well. It's just, it felt like big stuff was happening.
Yeah.
So,
I
you
agree.
know, so it only
Yeah.
requires one, but feels like,
Mhm.
you know, and now we're going to be heading into the reconnect, potentially, at least looking to see whether or not we're going to do that. And if we do, that will be money to the county that gets engaged again into Tillamook Lightwave. So I mean, I feel like there's still some kind of big things that could be happening.
I agree. And I agree that just having 2 people, you know, even if they're trusted people, 2 people is not very many to make big decisions. So when we lost the 3rd partner in that, we lost some balance on that group. So you're saying you're interested in that?
Sure.
Okay. And would you want to continue as the alternate, or how would you want to split that up?
So my thought would be to flip, with the intent to flip back. Just so come and attend, and once you've attended enough that you feel like you're up to speed, I am happy then to hand it back over the other direction, if that feels comfortable.
Okay.
I think that makes sense only because Commissioner Scar has been at all the meetings, and some of the decisions right now we're looking is what is future over the next 2 or 3 years. And there's been quite a bit of conversation about bringing in the college and a couple of others, but that didn't really work out. But the college is still interested, so that's still on the table in some form. But you'd be, in my opinion, you'd be better off as a non-voting, but being there and listening and speaking up. And the way it works now, the 4 of us who are there, we just have a conversation as if we all 4 had a vote, even though it's really only 2. So she always chips in as she does, and it's helpful. It truly is, because you have four people looking over whatever's going on.
so we have Aaron taking over the Lightwave and Paul will be the alternate.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and the EDC, is Doug, as he said, is an ex officio member, but the EDC is also on my list and I'm the board chair. So if you, I don't know about your level of interest in the EDC.
I'm interested in doing it at any capacity. So if you want to continue on, if you're enjoying what you're doing, again, I'm pretty easy with this, especially my first year.
Hmm.
So I'm fine. Just, I would like to be a part of it though.
Okay, well, why don't you take the Coal Pack
Yep.
and Northwest Act?
Yep.
And then if you can join us at the EDC meeting, what Doug has been doing is going to the Coal Pack meeting and then coming to the EDC meeting and reporting to EDC, which is very interesting because it's, you know, the regional approach to economic development is Coal Pack. Okay,
And Colpack's had some changes. The current director who was new on the job actually left in October. So now there's an interim. And so there were some fairly significant financial issues. They didn't have very good records of books for whatever reason, and they hadn't had an audit since 2022. And so I've spent a good share of my time with the three of us who are four actually, who are the executive board, one from each county, working through that and helping them find an auditor and recruitment now and all of that. So, but I think that will level out towards the first of the year because the person who's there may turn out to be permanent or not. But so it's a little more than just oversight. It's been a fair amount of hands-on, but I think that will diminish.
So for the Northwest, the Oregon Economic Alliance, that's kind of Paul too.
Paul. And Northwest Oregon Works is, Doug mentioned that. Do you know anything about it yet?
I don't, but
It's about workforce development and a county representative has to be on it for oversight of federal spending. So each of the partner counties.
sounds good.
And they have a very strong director and pretty good support. And the meetings are somewhere between 20 and 35, maybe 40 people, including, as I said, a state economist. One of the staff comes over from Salem, and you know they have bars and graphs and stuff. You know, but it's actually useful, and it's mostly sit and listen. But they talk about job training, and you know, and so you can take stuff back. Or you can add whatever. It's just, you know, it's a good meeting, but it's the people that run the employment department and a whole series of trainings and things. So, you know, and it's basically half a day every other month and a fair amount of emails and stuff, but you know, it's a state function. But it plays here. You know, we have an office down the street and there's one in every community basically, or one in every county.
It's an interesting one. There's kind of two meetings that you have become a part of. There's the consortium, which is the commissioners of the different counties, but then there is the actual workforce, the other actual workforce board, which is appointed by the board commissioners, but the rest of that is, it's a separate meeting. So there's two meetings you end up with, but the consortium meets like once or twice a year at most, and then you're encouraged to actually attend the other meeting. So it took me a while to figure out that those were two totally different
Right.
things that were happening, that the Northwest Oregon Works was not actually the consortium that I was a member of. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's confusing at best, but.
Yeah. Or at least at first.
At first, and then you go,
Yeah.
oh, we can go if we want, and we should, and we participate, but we actually have more of a true oversight function in some ways, right, of appointments.
Yes. Okay, so I think that covers all of, and on the EDC, only one of us is a voting member.
Sure.
And maybe we should, this might be a question for Rachel. Should we just start including the EDC meeting on our list of public meetings? Because we have two of us have been going, two of us will continue to go if Paul's interested. And we had someone either on the EDC board or adjacent to the EDC board complain to the clerk's office that two commissioners were attending that meeting. So we responded to that and said, we're not deliberating on county business. But it would be one step further in terms of covering our bases to just post that we're both attending.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you have to at all, but I think the more the public knows about what you're doing is just helpful information, so it doesn't hurt to have it on there.
All right, so for Doug's departments, I would like to go back to the Fair Board, and Paul has asked for Justice Court. I'm happy to make that trade. Is there anything that you wanted from that list?
There is not.
And is there anything you want to get rid of from your list?
Should we ask? Should we ask Sister-elect if she's here to
Well,
protest?
she already told me, that's why she's here. We had a
She's
conversation.
here to protest the appointment.
She would like you, Paul, because you're a kindred spirit. Both were elected at the same time.
Well, that's,
Okay, sounds
There
good.
you go. I don't really have anything that I'm that interested in getting rid of.
Reflection thing.
It's not on here, so, but we can add it on here. I think the question, I don't, because I think there will be a deflection oversight committee. Right now, it's an ad hoc planning committee. But yes, Paul,
Was the reflection part of the art team? Or they're
they're
separate?
separate.
Okay.
So our Tillamook is really the services side of it. It's working, I mean, it's working with more of the treatment providers, and then the deflection is,
The other
so there's kind of both. Although law enforcement does also sit in the our Tillamook group. So a little bit of both. There are just a couple things on my list that are not active. So the Oregon Coast Trail, North Coast Convener, there is
Can we just
no,
go with Doug's, the departments for
Oh,
Doug? If you don't mind?
so there's nothing in departments for me that would change unless somebody has a desire.
For Doug, for the clerk's office, who, would-
I think everything in Doug's is going to Paul other than the Fair Board.
thank you.
You're welcome.
The surveyor doesn't take much time. You, four of them, and you visit with them every few months. You know what I mean? Public Works does have every other month, there's a couple hours out there. They have a road advisory committee that's a pretty darn good meeting.
Public Works is fun. And
Yeah, I'm
Chris
looking
is
forward to
so
that one.
good.
I like Chris. Chris does a great job.
So for Aaron's required, are we keeping all of yours?
Yeah, I don't think there was anything there that changed. The Tillamook County Mental Health Advisory Committee, I believe, is going to be represented through our Tillamook. I'm working with the state on that right now, so that we do not have to seat a second committee that is also working on substance use disorder priority for the county.
Okay.
So I'm working with the state on having those be the same. There's a piece in the statute that says you can designate a currently existing committee, but they don't actually know how to do that.
Hmm.
So we're working on helping everybody figure that out
Okay.
so that we can meet the statute and
Okay.
And currently you have 4 departments.
yes,
Are those staying?
those are staying unless
Okay.
somebody wants to arm wrestle me for something.
And your others?
So for me, for other interests, there are some things that are not active. So the Oregon Coast Trail North Coast Convener, that is not an active committee any longer. The Oregon Timber Counties Coalition is no longer an active coalition. They paused all activity this year. And the Tillamook County Short-Term Rental Committee is not an active committee. at
I
this
think
time.
they have appointments that are, they don't have any end terms, so it's just an ongoing committee that they can be called back.
I suppose that that's true. We haven't done anything in the last year, and to the best of my knowledge, have no activities planned in the next year. Sarah is up here with us. If I know that we will be coming back as the commissioners to talk about the short-term rental numbers and different things, but that committee itself is not currently active.
Unlike the Oregon Coast Trail and the Oregon Timber, the short-term rental committee is a board-appointed committee though.
Okay,
So I would.
so I will
be
stay.
inclined to
I will
leave-
stay with it. Happy to do that.
And all the others you're keeping, okay, apart from the 2 you mentioned.
Well, those are fine.
Okay. Since OCZMA is coming back into action, we should talk about that.
I am interested in that.
Okay. Okay with that?
All yours.
The Oregon.
All yours.
It's already
Doug's list.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing, like, you mentioned Carl was the wellness. I thought you were dumping that on me too.
I think I think they would really benefit from your leadership and your participation. So,
So I think that'd be fine.
yes,
We'll see the MA to you.
yes, to Paul.
Oh, Tillamook Wellness, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you about a couple of these that I'm on here. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management that's kind of at the call of the chair there. I don't think there's much going on because the feds withdrew all that stuff that was going on the South Coast. But as soon as it gets back on the front page, then they'll have something to talk about. The Roads Advisory Committee meets every other month, basically, at Public Works. And the Fishermen's Advisory Committee meets once a year, coming up here in December usually. And they may not even do it, but they've got like a few $100 or a couple of $1,000 in the bank. And it was created when they started stringing the undersea cables, so they'd be able to weigh in on the fishing crowns and all that.
That's the committee that I have to follow up to, because I don't think they're active. They haven't been active in the last probably
It's not,
3
okay.
years.
I thought we had a meeting last December.
With fact.
Maybe that's another one I'm thinking of.
So that one I will confirm.
Yeah, we talked a couple months ago when we were doing the committee cleanup. And that was one that we talked about.
Yeah,
potentially
I think you're right. That one may be off the books for now. The OCZMA is coming back to life, and I'm going down to Newport we just hired a firm to put it back together and manage it and take over from AOC. And so they will be meeting probably every other month, and then maybe some online stuff. And this new firm we're using, I don't remember the name, but they're going to try and bring in more counties and cities and port districts and beef it up. So when stuff goes on in the ocean, they've got to talk to the right people, and we have a seat at the table.
I forwarded to you, Paul, my invitation.
On that, I didn't know about that. I did make a lunch meeting with Dan from the parks. But maybe
Oh, yeah, I bet you could reschedule. Yeah.
So I'll look into that.
The super highway salmon, we're pretty active in that, and it's essentially Tillamook County. And the main guy is Chris, because he's in charge of culverts, and that's what they do. But they've got money, they've got grants. They had an annual meeting not too long ago, and there were like 50, 60 people there. I mean, it's pretty active, and they've got a track record that's quite impressive. So,
Are you
and
doing that one?
they're rolling forward. Sitka said just had a meeting here a couple of weeks ago too, and essentially that's we should appoint Isabel to manage the whole thing. It's in her backyard.
Perfect.
There's two. Unless I'm missing it here, there's two that I'm not seeing. We don't have a representative on the Nehalem Bay Volunteer Corps group. You're not
Well,
actually on that.
Unofficially, it's me, but I'm happy to be it because I'm emergency management and I have the South County one.
Yeah, I guess I thought a board member was on that, but not
Officially.
not officially. Okay.
Actually had one.
And then the emergency committee, is that not on here
The
either?
T4.
No, the board appointed committee.
Oh, this one?
No.
The emergency
The emergency
management
management,
advisory
yeah,
committee,
that's
that's
the one,
definitely me.
yeah.
So a couple more here. They got Sitka Sedge is they're going to meet again, and they've been it's basically the backflow water into Sand Lake and flooding and encroachment on homes. And the state has developed a Sitka Sedge wayside down that way, and it's really quite nice. I've walked all the way up to the ocean from there before, but they still have flooding issues. And she's the head of the homeowner association, so you really pick her brain if you want to know something. And then the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, you know what that is? That's Justin and his stuff. And then the Small Business Development Center Advisory Committee is run by Leon Telesmanich, if you know Leon. It's connected to the college. They run Well, they do a lot of training and it's a federal program, but he runs the county one and each county has one. And one of the more effective ones here is a truck driving
Oh,
because that's connected to the college and this is funded at least in part through the college, or it used to be, but he has a meeting I think basically when he wants it, or maybe every quarter, I don't know, but it's kind of, he'll just report what's happening and how many people are enrolled in one thing or another and then ask for some input from various people. And, it's an active group and I know the college has a pretty strong connection to that one too, right?
True. Yeah. So that could be mine. I'm happy for you to have it if you want, but it kind of goes with EDC and the college.
that's what I thought. It was intertwined with that. So
Okay. You want to move that to mine?
you want to move it to yours? Yeah.
I'm just saying it goes with EDC and the college, which I have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay.
So out of Doug's,
See to me.
we have, everything goes to Paul other than the last committee, that small business.
Everything but the first and last.
And who's taken over the Bolin?
The first one doesn't exist, he thinks.
Bureau of Ocean Energy Management.
Okay,
So Boom is gone and Fact is
Oh,
gone.
oh, Boehm is that's kind of at the call, and I'm not even sure who heads that up now. That's in response to federal stuff.
That's not active right now, you don't think?
No, there was some stuff that went on until the feds backed off.
Yeah, they pulled the releases.
Yeah, they had 5 companies international that were going to put all this stuff in the ocean, and 4 of them stepped back. And the feds said, which was the right decision, we can't do it with only one company, and we got too many other issues, and they didn't have stuff on land. And this group was representing coastal interests, and I think it also went through LCDC. And
You can
so
leave me on that.
I'd keep
I can investigate a little further and see if it's
Yeah.
effective.
keep
Okay.
Wait,
keep
the
our
call,
keep
we
our
don't have to-
contacts
We'll be like,
active.
Paul goes. We'll be like, Paul goes.
I did. I actually signed up for the workshop and then when it kind of fell apart,
But if the feds decide to do something, I think we need a seat at the table for sure.
Okay. Anything else you're particularly interested
no,
in?
I'm just checking my list. No,
And I would suggest if there's anything, like, I know you and I have talked a little bit about housing, just if we want to start, I mean, it's already a public meeting for housing, but to Commissioner Bell's point, if
Yeah,
there are
that-
2 of us there and it upsets the apple cart, we can start noticing that one as well. And that might
I
be,
do like going to the planning commission and housing commission meetings. I do like one of those.
yeah. And so I think there's that piece where, certainly in this first year, let's notice the things that you want to go to so that we don't
Yeah.
have people calling the clerk's office. And
That
then.
would definitely be one.
Yeah, and so that then next year when we're sitting at the same table, you can be like, that is one I actually would really like to have, and we can have some more dialogue and see if there's some more that would go your direction, other things would flip.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, because you have the opportunity to dive in and learn all new
Sure.
stuff. Like when I came in and I got Public Works and Solid Waste, I was thinking, I know absolutely nothing, but it was really fun to learn it. It was very fun. Solid Waste is fascinating, complicated, interesting, and Public Works is a blast. And you can remind Chris of this. When he gave me an introductory tour, he let me drive an excavator.
All right.
He let me move dirt with an excavator. Yeah, it's fun.
You're amused easily, aren't you?
I thought it was great. I got to dig a hole and move some logs.
Actually, solid waste is, Justin comes in here frequently. It's a multi-million-dollar business around here.
Make sure, Bill, you're keeping all of your other departments other than the Justice Court.
Yep, and I'm getting the Fair Board back.
Again, the Fair Board, correct. And
Those are pretty minor changes. I think we can work this into an order by the 18th meeting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So the one that we didn't talk, I guess, so the Council for us Trust Land Counties, the voting member of that, did that go with Doug's? Was that in there? I don't remember us talking about it.
Oh, maybe we didn't talk about it. Let's do.
I don't think we did. So I am the chair on the Council for us Trust Land Counties. I can be the voting member, or we can have a second person. And it's my recommendation that we have a second person, just because that's 2 Tillamook voices and faces at the table. So I don't know who would like to do that. The Council of Forest Trust Land Counties and the Forest Trust Land Advisory Committee are essentially the same group of people, although they are in fact two distinct and separate groups. They do everything somewhat in tandem. So the typical thing is that we meet as the Forest Trust Land Advisory Committee a week or two before the Board of Forestry meets. We get a preview to what the Board of Forestry is going to see or hear. We have the opportunity to talk about what we want to present to the Board of Forestry. And then we attend the Board of Forestry during our testimony presentation time. We also occasionally have workshops with the Board of Forestry. So this is a meeting every other month, roughly. It's a huge commitment, not a huge commitment at the same time. Right now, we are working through what will be the next steps in implementing the HCP. So we have had 2 special meetings with the Board of Forestry, and we'll have an additional special meeting with them in April after the modeling has been done to say, okay, if they go this direction, it looks like this, and so on and so forth. So a lot of opportunity to learn, but there is a certain amount of time commitment to it. And Doug, I don't know if you want to say anything. You've been attending and been the voting
Well,
member.
they have a considerable amount of influence. There are, what, 13 counties in it?
There are 13 because there are 14. There are 15 trust land counties, but Klamath County has their own HCP that went in years ago. So when we talk HCP, they're really only 14.
Well, the Oregon Department of Forestry, that's the issue. And right now, they're short about, I don't know, 68 million. They can't pay the bills for the firefighting and all of that. And so you have some influence on that. But the big thing, at least the time I was here, was the set aside of another third of the forest. And I would agree, it's better to have 2 people there. I've been online, I think, to almost every meeting and over there for 1 or 2. And it helps because it can influence the Board of Forestry, although it didn't have success with that 1 vote. But nonetheless, because forest is such a big deal here, I think we have to have a presence there. And we have a larger voting block than the others. There are others that represent 3-4 counties, and we get 1.
Next, there are 5 board members for the 15 counties. Tillamook has a vote, Clatsop has a vote, and then the rest of them are groups of counties. So we're considered sort of, the big dogs in the room.
Super vote.
I'm gonna guess because Commissioner Bell hasn't said anything, she probably doesn't mind if I have this.
I'm willing, and I do not mind if you have, it's
I don't
important.
mind, I don't mind taking that.
Perfect.
So Paul will be the voting member.
I will be the voting member, and so when the board order's done, then I will submit that to the CFTLC for you to be the voting member.
And will you participate at all? Or
I
you?
will be the chair. I'm the chair of CFTLC.
Does that need to be on here anymore?
Chair? I don't know. I don't, we listed it when David had it as chair. I mean, it certainly should list me under the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties.
I think he did have it on there as
Had
chair.
all of this.
Yeah, he had all.
Okay,
yeah.
so I am chair for that and chair for FTLNC because those 2 go together. And then the one that isn't on here is ONC counties. And every county, I believe, has a board position. And so I am on the board position for ONC.
Are we adding ONC
Could
County?
probably add ONC on here just because I believe it is technically a board position that Tillamook County holds for the ONC counties.
Or all 3 commissioners? Or
So I,
just for you?
yeah.
Okay.
If everyone's good with that, it tends to follow CFTLC and FTLNC.
No, Commissioner Yamamoto, I think had done. this.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else we're missing?
Just a confirmation for you, Commissioner Bell, for NOAA and the Hazard Mitigation Steering Committee. Are you still staying on you're still staying on the NOAA board?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think the Hazard Mitigation Committee is one of those committees that it doesn't meet very often and it's tied into community development.
Yes, I think that's true. Okay,
And then the only last question I had, the Emergency Management Committee, that was the committee where we,
it's me.
is you, but there's, okay,
And is that a statutory IGA one? I think, is it? Because we appoint it, right?
No,
So the interest committee.
it is, we started it when, after Gordon left. And we had a new emergency manager and we wanted the community to advise us on
Okay,
that
yeah.
position. So we started the committee and appointed, but we don't have specific people appointed to it. I think we have,
We don't,
but anyway, yes.
okay. I will add that. And I'll do a final review of this and check in with you, each individual, one to
Great.
make sure I
Perfect. Okay.
recorded everything correctly. Do you have any additions?
We didn't do Rachel's. We typically do yours.
I don't even have. Yeah, and I don't even know if it really is applicable in this anymore.
Maybe not.
Yeah, we can, I mean, I'm good either way, but
I think it'd be good because I feel like it should be on the county website when people, hey, who do I reach out to talk about X?
okay, not on the finance committee. That was a 1 year. Still the risk management, still facilities, the PAC, Flood Improvement District, the TAC, veterans. So all that is accurate except for the first one, and then I would add HR and IS.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Did you scratch?
Yeah.
I think I have everything I need. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. All right, nothing more on this?
Just wondering if the executive team should be on there.
Oh,
I don't think so. I think that's an
That's
internal
internal.
operational.
So is the executive risk management committee. I don't know. I just thought it occurred to me. You can sit on that.
And I put on your name as for
mhm.
that, but right, it's the kind of your list.
Thank you, Isabel. Nothing else on that? Okay. So we can talk about the PLT update. The sheriff and I met yesterday, had a great conversation. I think he's online. If he wants to chime in, that would be great. We talked about the moving forward potentially with the in May and what that would look like. The sheriff said he would like to be on the committee. He'd like to be at the table. He'd like to be involved in the process. And is there anything that you want to add to that conversation, Sheriff, if you're able to? My takeaway is that we're moving forward and you're going to be involved with us and be at the table with us, working on language. You know, you're just we want your voice to be more involved in the process.
So yeah, we did have a good conversation. You know, I'm not, you know, one thing I did mention to you in there is that I didn't necessarily think that it needed to go on the November ballot, which we kind of discussed a little bit. I'm still not 100% convinced of the timing of it, but that's not really what I'm trying to get terribly involved in. I want to make sure that, especially if we're using the name of the sheriff's office, that I would be involved in it. That's what I'm asking. So I remember I did have a little bit of input quite a while ago. It was in person in front of the board, and I'd mentioned, you know, percentages, and then it was asked of me if it would be in addition to or offset, and I said, you know, of course I would want it to be in addition. And I kind of at that time thought it was just more of a brainstorming session. I didn't realize that we were going to move forward with saying 80% for the sheriff's office, but it's offset. So realistically, that's not a benefit to the sheriff's office. That's one of my big hangups, is that saying 80%, but it's offset. is really not a benefit for the sheriff's office, but we're using the sheriff's office or public safety name to get this thing passed. So that was kind of what ruffled my feathers a little bit, and kind of why I felt it was important when I ended up bringing the information to Rachel. So being able to have a voice at the table, if we're going to try to use the sheriff's office or public safety's name, I think is really, really important. I personally, I don't think we need to. I think when the time comes, whatever time that is, we should be messaging this and targeting that this is just simply making the tourists pay their fair share. I don't think we need to get too far into the weeds about, I don't think we need to use public safety name. One of the big things is the campaign for the bond. I put a lot of political capital into that, and that really is the first thing that I've actually publicly endorsed, and 49% of the voters voted against it. So, that's why I'm very cautious about getting behind political things of that nature. I've not endorsed any candidates, and I think I spoke up about what Measure 114 or the one about the guns, but that was the only thing that I've ever done. And so, going from November and with all of what I put towards that, and then coming right back in May and doing that again, that's just that's something I'm really, really not comfortable with. I mean, so anyways, having a voice at the table on how it's worded is incredibly important to me, especially if the sheriff's office is mentioned heavily in this. So that's kind of my general overview. I guess I'll leave it at that and answer questions if need be, or kind of voice my opinion if something comes up.
Thank you. Well, I think Josh had concerns that maybe May was too soon following November. My feedback on that is that I don't think so, but neither of us are political consultants. I don't think so because raising the TLT is, Tillamook County citizens are not paying for that unless of course we're, staying in vacation rentals here. So I think the voters, they know the difference. They know the difference about who's paying. So I don't think so, but we could certainly talk to a political consultant about timing if we thought that was a good idea, but we could also try it in May and see what happens. So I disagree with what the sheriff just said about if it's not in addition to, he feels like it's not a benefit to the sheriff's office, because it is a benefit to the sheriff's office to stabilize that funding. And I've said before, my goal is to be able to provide or shore up our current level of services, and to not have to take from the savings account to balance the budget. So I think that is a benefit to the sheriff's office, not exclusively. It's a benefit to the whole county. That's true. It's a benefit to the general fund. That's true. In terms of, I loved yesterday, he suggested using the tagline, "Get tourists to pay their fair share." I love that tagline. It's totally usable. It will definitely work, and I appreciate that. And to that specifically, the tourist fair share, they don't tap the other general fund departments. They tap the sheriff's office, law enforcement, all first responders of all kind, and parks. So to get them to pay their fair share, we're not asking them to pay their fair share of the assessor's office or the commissioner's office, et cetera, other general fund departments. So I think people will naturally ask, what are you going to use this? What are you going to spend this on? And we need to work together to figure out how to craft that message in a way that's comfortable for the sheriff's office and truthful and something people will understand. So I think we can work together to accomplish that. And I told the sheriff yesterday, I don't feel like I need him to be, tabling with me or doing all the things that he was doing to promote the radio bond. I feel like it's it's the commissioner's responsibility to figure out where, how to bring in new revenue and how to pay for the things we want to do that are funded by the general fund. And, you know, if the sheriff wants to sit this one out in terms of actively endorsing it, I think that's okay. And, I think we can make it work.
I think the radio bond, not radio bond, we get the PLT will be a relatively easy sell for the very reason that you said, it's not paid by local people. And everyone I've ever talked to says, you know, the burden, they acknowledge and understand, at least in part, the burden of people who come here for a day or 3 or 5 or however long, because they cause water systems to be enlarged. They build for the 4th of July. You don't build for Tuesday in February, all those kinds of things. So there's a piece of logic that people clearly understand that in February, we don't have as many people as we do in July, but the people in July require services and infrastructure that needs to be paid for. So that, to me, that's a pretty straightforward, and that's been used elsewhere. I don't like the word fair share because nobody, every person who's used that, I've asked them, well, what is your fair share? And they can't tell me. And that drives me nuts, but that's just a personal thing with me.
Okay.
And, you know, some political parties use that, you know, that big corporations need to pay their fair share. And I say, what is their fair share? And they can't tell me. So I don't want to get us in a corner on that, but you know, it is what it is.
In
And
that case, it'd be 15%.
it would be, and that would be the fair share until something changes. No question about that. But I think this is, for the people, would be pretty straightforward. What I worry about, having been in the business 20-some years on with room taxes, is are the motel operator, hotel, tourism people, are they with us? So, and I don't know that for sure, but they need to be neutral or with us, or we're going to have trouble. Kelly will have trouble. So that is one step, and then there needs to be something started on a campaign. If it goes in the May primary, and if you remember when we started all the budget conversations, a lot of what happened in years 2, 3, and 4 was predicated on this passing in May and being effective as of July 1. Otherwise, you lose an entire cycle and you're another $1 million out of balance. So I think if you're going to ask the voters, do it right, ask them in May. And if it fails, I guess then you regroup. But go ahead and demonstrate a need for it and why it's there, and let the voters decide like they always do. So to me, that's some of the initial. And by the way, whenever a campaign is set up, the PAC that we set up for the radio has about $7,000 remaining.
That's great.
So that could go towards any effort and, you know, outside funding. And that's another thing to consider. We only had 3 contributors to the radio bond, and that got up to around $45 million. I don't think we have that luxury here. The county does not. So if you're going to have a 20 or 30 or $40,000 campaign, it's going to come in 500 or 200 or 600 at a time.
You just said 45 million. Did you,
I
you must
said-
have meant something
I
else.
meant 45,000.
There we
Did I say million?
Yeah,
You did.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
that's
what
good.
Yeah.
happens when you work in government. It's just
and we were all thinking,
always zero.
wait, Doug, where's that?
No, I think you can run a very credible campaign for $35,000 or $40,000 that would disseminate truthful or even
Mhm.
favorable information if it's a separate PAC, like is ordinarily done. But that's, you know, a decision that you'll have to make at some point. But I would advise you, having done this now a number of times, you don't want to be talking about this in February.
Mhm.
You'll just flat out run out of time.
Mhm. So I'm hoping that you'll just help me with it as soon as you get back from California.
I can do that, provided I don't have to come in at 8 o'clock in the morning and all that.
Don't.
No, I'd be happy to do that. I prefer, for my personal, I don't want to be out in front because I don't want to be branded as a guy who's always asking for money.
Yeah, you and the sheriff. both.
I've had that more than once and that's not true, but I'd be happy to do stuff behind the scenes or set up a pack and, the financial arrangements that we have with another firm. All that's pretty straightforward. And once you establish it, then it's a matter of emails and clicks and stuff like that.
Great.
But there will need to be some effort and we should all give some thought of how we're going to come up with 25, 30 or $35,000 to get the word out.
Mhm.
Because it does cost money and regardless of the medium, it's gonna have to pay for it.
Okay. The sheriff has his hand up.
So just to kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that have been mentioned so far. With what you're saying about the public understanding the difference and that it wouldn't be on them, I agree. I think they will be able to logically figure that out. I don't think that's the danger. I mean, there's also some hesitancy from me on where we actually are as a county financially. I can't find the seed corn that supposedly the sheriff's office is eaten into. And I thought that the ARPA was going to help, not delay, but help us bridge the gap for a little bit longer than we had expected. We have a legitimate assessment coming in that's going to paint us a really, really good picture. And I think it would be very smart of us to see what that picture looks like. I think all of those things right there kind of help lean towards being patient. And then when you get to what you guys are saying about the public understanding that they're not the ones necessarily paying the tax, I agree. But when you think about election fatigue, November was a tough election. You've got, political ads that were coming out left and right ahead of that election season. So you've got that fatigue. You've got a very, very large bond that was passed for the county. And then 6 months later, the county's coming back for asking for more money again. Now, whether or not they understand that they may not be the ones doing it, the perception that the county is just doing a money grab is a very, very dangerous perception. And that's my concern. Now, I may not be right. Like I told Mary Faith, I was very hesitant to think that the bond was going to actually pass on our very first go around. I honestly was pleasantly surprised when it did pass. So my analyzation of that was incorrect. So I'm not saying that I'm absolutely right, but a lot of people are going to have the perception that the county's just coming in to do a money grab, especially if we're doing it 6 months after getting a $24 million bond. So I think, and I'm not the expert in analyzing that. So whether or not you go to the polls or you talk to a company or something, but I think that perception is a real danger that we need to be aware of, which is another, both of those factors are influencing my decision or my thought process. So I just wanted to say that out loud.
Thank you.
Well, I think most of you remember the road bond back in 2013 that 3 or 4 of us worked on. That was a two-part. The first was the road bond itself, which was $15 million, followed 6 months later by the TLT. And it was a collective story at the time that we will pay, we the taxpayers of Tillamook, will bite the bullet and we'll move ourselves from number 36 up to the middle of the pack in road quality, which we have done. And then we'll ask the tourists to pay some when they come as well. And that was the story then. Now, it may be all different now because they're two different things in a way, but I don't know, the people were just as smart then as they are now. And I think they saw the difference. One was into the county's pockets, citizens here, and the other was asking people who visit to pay something as well, even though it was distributed a little differently and all that. So I think you don't want to underestimate the intelligence of a voter. They truly know what's going on, and you cannot fool them. They will see right through it. So if you explain it clearly, just my opinion, I think we have a good chance. The bigger part to me is the timing and is the industry itself on board or silent. But I'm less worried about coming at them in 6 months than not, because I think the downside is there's opens another page we don't want to turn maybe.
And if I can ask a history question, Doug, on that, you mentioned the road bond followed by TLT. Wasn't that accompanied by a promise by the board that the 30% would go to the road as additional funds?
It
Is that
was, and-
how
and
that was set up?
you're Absolutely right, and that's what helped sell it, and the board has kept that commitment all these years. Whoever was on the board, that was
Correct.
absolutely a truthful statement all along and has been to this day. You're right, and that might have
No,
been.
I think that's a big factor, that promise was made and that this board has kept that promise. And that may have had a factor in how it played out that 6 months. And then I was just trying to get that history to make sure that was correct. Thank you.
I have some similar concerns about timing. And I'm concerned because I'm coming in less than a month now, but I think it's not so much whether would it pass, it very well might pass. I would prefer to go to November, but the reason I'd prefer to do that is one, a realistic timeline. We've been throwing out a lot of solutions to our budget problems, which include the rate case and PUD franchise fees. But we haven't really had a discussion, and hopefully we will in January, about a timeline for those, when those would occur, because we keep going back to the trough. I have a problem with it. Again, we just asked for a big ask. I think this is an easy sell, but to be an easier sell, we really need, in my opinion, and this has been told to us by, well, we need a 70%. We need amenity projects that are definable, achievable, in my opinion, to help sell this. Amenity to use for the 70%. That's another thing that they told us this. They're telling us out loud that municipalities and counties fail to have that fleshed out. And I have some ideas on some projects that'll actually bring revenue in, which is what we've been talking about in my campaign on that. So I'm really concerned about pushing this out and not having really considerate discussions about the 70% and how that can help the county too, because I feel like even if it's a parking lot that only makes $200,000 a year, that's $200,000 a year that we're building, and we can build it with DLT money. So it's no money out of general fund, but yet it can be money that's put back into general fund. So I feel like having the time to kind of breathe after November's election, people are on both sides of the aisle are kind of wondering what's going to happen. We're talking about windmills are probably shelved now for at least 4 years, according to the incoming president. So I'm concerned about the 70%. I have some ideas on projects I'd like to have some really, and that includes a lot of input from the community, and I want to have time for that. Also, I've been asking for this for years before I was in this position, trying to get accurate numbers of what the visitors are actually using. So from 911, I talked to Netarts Fire. They're actually now compiling visitor data to see so we can sit here in this thing while we're trying to sell this. Because I will be out in the front on this, but not if we rush it. If we have the time to really present it. And to the sheriff's point, I'm still trying to get my head around, and I talked to Aaron about this, Commissioner Scar about this, where the goalpost is, where we are. I'm waiting for when Sean does a supplemental budget report. I'm looking forward to seeing where we're at. And let me preface this. I know we need to bring more money in. I know that may only help us for 1 year. I'm not saying that we're good, but I really want an accurate figure of where we're at. I'd like to wait for the financial report to come back and see what their recommendations are, because they were presented with a lot of choices. So this could still happen in May, maybe, but I'm just worried about all these timelines. And if we're going to go back to the public, or not even go back to them and just throw a PUD franchise fee or another option, or other franchise fees. So I want us to be thoughtful about this whole process. So I am concerned about being rushed. And I definitely think if we're gonna push it faster, we've got to get the 70% figured out and well defined. So those are my main concerns about the timeline and whether or not we need it for next year or not. We definitely need it for the years after that.
Thank you.
Here's another point, if I could, on this coming spring election will be school boards and special districts. And we've got at least one school board that has quite a bit of turmoil, and they could overshadow, and they could also increase the turnout. And typically, if you look at the broad spectrum across states in America, the more people you have out voting, which is a good thing from a democratic standpoint, you have more issues in not passing financial measures. People, if they don't understand it, they tend to vote no. So if you have a lower turnout, you have a somewhat better chance of passing. So that's just one more part to what Paul just said is you may have a higher turnout because of the turmoil, and I don't know who's running for school board, but you know what, that's something to consider. I'll just throw that.
Don't we generally though have a higher turnout in November than May? Because I was thinking the
Yeah.
same thing. If anything, Aaron, it's been quiet.
So, yeah. So I think for me, I don't have a firm position either way. At this point, I feel a bit like we really should be engaging with an expert. That we've had a lot of conversation about the political environment, about messaging, about potential opposition, all of these things. And it's not an area of expertise for me. Messaging is, anyone would tell you, it's not my gig. Political environment, again, not something that I'm an expert in. And I feel like these are really important things that can make the difference on whether or not we can be successful in May without tripping over the things that have been brought up around voter fatigue, around voters feeling like we're coming for a money grab, all of these things. And so it just feels to me like, from my perspective, I don't have the information I need to make a good decision on this without actually getting answers from someone whose expertise it is that says, this is valid. You know, there is a political environment that's dangerous right now. It really would behoove you to hold it off for a political expert that says, no, actually, what we find is it makes no difference, right? But we have varying opinions in the room. I don't see myself having any potential expertise in this and find myself looking for an expert to help me find the right path forward, because that's generally what I do when it's not my expertise. Is I look for someone who can help guide. And I really feel like in this case, we would benefit from that. I also understand that our timing is short to try to engage an expert, which concerns me then that we're moving forward without the expertise, in a rush. So I don't know. And I guess I'm looking at Rachel in part because we have had this conversation a little bit about, we already have Praxis that we know is an expert. I realize we would probably have to do an RFP and do all of these things again. It's not as simple as we would like it to be unless we can do some, small appointment with them just to get some of the expertise. They've been working in Tillamook County over the last year with us. They have some sense of our electorate, some sense of our environment. I guess that would be my hope, is that we can find someone to help us.
So I have several things to add, kind of different pieces of this. So I have no agenda in this. These are just data points. So the process that we've been on was this month we would be finalizing language to the draft ordinance. The first part of that is complete, where we talk about the 1% with the cities. And then the last piece was adding in the percentages, which is an easy add. From there, to meet the May election timelines without being rushed with the public process, I was recommending that the public notice be issued January 7th, which means the document is in draft form, with the first hearing being January 15th and the second and final hearing, presumably final hearing, January 29th. There's a little bit of wiggle room in there, of about, there's a couple of weeks of wiggle room in there that aren't the drop dead deadlines to meet the May election. But I know what this process is, and kind of a little bit of the start and stop and the public process that we're going to be going through. So that was a conservative timeline to meet the May timeline. That's the process, that's the track that we've been on. Additionally, there was a request from the cities to meet and get an update on where we were, and so that was on hold, but we were tentatively looking at that being December 18th. So that's where we are with that process. So I would urge you that if you want to go for the May election, you really need to decide very soon if you're going to do that or not. I would say by the end of December, so staff has time to finalize that language. So for what that's worth. Regarding the facilities piece, Nan, you've seen the preliminary work. She just provided me an update with their recommendations, and I have that that we can bring forward to the commissioners whenever you want to dive into that.
Will you please forward it to Tom?
Yes.
And did I get that and just miss it in an email?
So she presented 2 months ago, maybe a month ago.
This isn't an update to that.
No, it is an update. I just got it a day or so ago, and it's ready to have Nan come and present when the time is right in this discussion. Didn't think we were there now, but I just got it. And whenever you want to hear a presentation on that, we can. But I can forward it all to you in the meantime.
Thank you. That would be great. Thank you.
Regarding the talk of the financial assessment, just to be clear, we are not doing a financial assessment right now. So I've been talking through all these budget roundtable committee meetings about, as we're talking about potential reductions and increases, in an ideal world, we have all of the pieces that we want to do on both sides to show the whole picture along with an assessment. So whatever we're asking for from staff or the public, it's in one picture and it's better supported and more strategic. The first piece of that is the budget roundtables have concluded, and we've hired Tiberius to move full speed ahead in the utility work, which they're doing. We'll have an update from them by the end of December, but there won't be any decisions made by then. After that, they are going to jump right into, and they're already contracted for this work, to explore all of those alternatives that came out of the budget roundtable. That work is going to go into the spring. Concurrent with all of that, I'm looking at doing a financial assessment with them potentially, but probably not because of capacity, but likely a different consultant to do a financial assessment. You may have seen that work listed in the postponed ARPA projects. So the financial assessment is a different piece of the Tiberius work, which again would be into next year. The last thing I wanted to clarify, the polling. So the polling work and the campaign work were two different contracts. The polling work was just under $25,000 with Pitkin, I can never get his name right. And that was a direct appoint. So we could move ahead with polling, but given the timeline I just described for the ordinance adoption, you could absolutely do polling before you make final decisions for this to go to ballot, but you would be doing the polling concurrently with the ordinance adoption, which is a little wonky. But you can do it. And then the campaign is a different contract, which you would have plenty of time to do for the campaign, or an RFP for the campaign. So just some information.
Thank you. Well, I'm wondering, it doesn't seem to me like we're all on the same page in terms of the financial need. So sitting here in my own skin, I'm feeling very anxious about finances, and that my belief and my feeling is that it's our responsibility to figure out how we can generate revenue now, not next November, but now. And maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I don't need to be carrying around all this anxiety. But this is our job. It isn't actually the sheriff's job. It's our job to figure out if we can generate revenue, if we can bring in more revenue to balance the budget. So I don't feel good about waiting until November as if we don't need the money between now and then, because we do. So, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we don't.
I think it is an interesting shift. I get, the political climate and all of that, but from just reminding you what I've heard over the last several months is we absolutely need the money yesterday. That has not changed. And that's not going to change with anything Tiberius gives us. And so the urgency is still there, and it has always been said. I've heard nobody say it's not going to be mostly a slam dunk. You know, the messaging and all of that, certainly there's lots to be discussed there, but you know, and I'm not advocating, I'm just reminding that that's been the talking points over the last couple of months is we need it. Even though ARPA is helping us out tremendously, that's fabulous. But if we still need the money, and we do, the TLT money just helps get us further ahead of that curve. And there's so many things we need to spend money on with facilities and lots of other things that need the money.
I don't think there's any chance that any financial assessment is gonna say you don't need more money.
And everything that Tiberius is going to be sharing with us, we're months, maybe even a year away from some of these things, even the utility work. By the time any of that gets approved and revenues come in, we're way past ARPA, we're halfway into next fiscal year, et cetera, et cetera. And so I just fear that in being here so many times before talking about these types of things, we think it's going to be okay. And then something happens and it's like, oh, we should have done that, or, you know, so just food for thought.
And I'm listening to your frustrations and I totally understand, or I think I do, because that it would feel rushed to you because you're not in it, you're not in yet. And you have a lot that you want to do. And if we go to May, that's a short time period. And so I just want to say, I think I understand what you're saying. And we won't have to decide before May. We don't have to firmly decide. We won't be setting up a strategic plan saying this is absolutely how we're going to invest the 70%. What I think we'll go to the voters with is, here are our ideas for how we'll invest the 70%. And this is so exciting. I think what we did today will be a great example to say, you know, when we have money in this account with this 70%, we can invest it in community things that the community genuinely loves and supports and wants, and exciting new things, and the things that the community has told us repeatedly that they want: trailheads, bathrooms, parking. You know, so I think we'll go out with some really great ideas, but none of it is going to be decided. And I hope that you're going to be intimately involved in all of that planning. And I think you have great ideas. So I don't think in any way that if we go out in May, it's too late for you to have a lot of influence in the 70%. I think, you know, and I don't think we would go out with a complete plan. I think we would go out with well-supported ideas.
I think that's probably a fair assessment, but I also would really like to see, I'm really looking forward to the supplemental budget. I really want to see the numbers. I'm doing a deep dive in the budget, and no offense, the goalpost keeps getting moved. Like, we needed this much money, we got that much money. We need this much money, we figured out where we could offset that much money. So you making it sound like now I'm even confused even more. I didn't know the financial thing wasn't going to be ready till spring. My understanding was that was going to be something would be presented about the options, what would be the best options. That was my understanding. So if I'm the only one that misunderstood that, I apologize. But I thought we were going to be given, of all those new choices that were discovered in the roundtable, we would be giving some of the best options based on the work that they had done for other
We talked about that.
municipalities. So I thought that, I didn't know that was going to be till spring. Two, I would like to know really where we are in the hole at this point, because my understanding, I know I'm not alone as among county leaders, is that we thought again, this year, we
Right.
thought we had fixed it. So we're not going into this pit of despair this year.
Right.
Right. So I would love to see the numbers. I'm looking forward to the numbers after ARPA has been applied, after the non-field position has been applied. I'm seeing money in accounts, and I'm wondering, I have definite questions for Treasurer Blanchard about them, because I'm not an accountant, but I don't understand how where some money is and why can't that be used as well. So I have a lot of questions, And it doesn't matter because, I'm not in here yet. My concerns aren't just me being involved with the amenity projects or the facility project. It's really concerned about, I am coming in as a new commissioner and already we just asked for a bunch of money, which I helped on the radio bond, and now we're coming in again. So I do have concerns. I think it would pass probably because of what it is, but I do have some concerns. And then again, my timeline means what other things are down the road that we are going to have to ask the public and the citizens that live here to dig in their pockets and pay for. So those are my concerns. It's not just am I going to be a part of the planning? So I want to make sure it's clear. It's like I need, and maybe in January I'll get a better idea of this, or I'll be, behind the curtain. I can see it clearly because right now I'm just confused on the goal keeps moving. Like we thought we, solved the problem, but now it's out here. Okay, well, we solved the problem. Now it's out here. And so I guess I'm just confused about that. So.
Well, I think that information will be valuable to all of us for sure. And it could be that I've misunderstood the timeline, but my perception was that we had solved the problem for this budget year with the combination of ARPA and what we're going to do next week with the funds from unfilled positions that for this budget year, which ends in June. So we're halfway through it.
Well, by our calculations, it also helps the beginning fund balance. So now I'm hearing that it's not going to help the beginning fund balance.
We started 411,000 out of balance, which then increased up to around 700,000 or 800,000. And that could change one more time when we get another estimate. But
There's 2 more quarters left for timber.
Yeah, that's right.
It'd be worse.
But this year, the way I understand it, and I've been watching probably as closely except for her, is we will have, there'll be no significant issues this year. We will have a $10 million beginning cash balance July 1, provided that these unfilled positions are memorialized and pushed off and the money is put where it needs to be, meaning discretionary into the general fund, and then that nothing significant changes.
Right, so that helps next year. That's my
That
thing.
starts next year, but next year, the full cycle is somewhere around 3 million. That's the bigger question where this long-term stuff is going to play in. But, budgetary stuff is not 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. It's year after year after year. Some of these changes take a long time. But what I would do, I don't know if I can go back to the way I've always looked at something like whether you go in May or not, would be, is the upside more advantageous than the downside? Is it dead even, or can we even tell, or is there more reason to try, even if it fails, than to not try at all and push it off? That's as simple as I could ever make anything, is, up or down, yes or no, and if it fails, what have we lost?
Right. Yeah. We learn what we can from it and figure out what we want to do next. It seems to me like there's a greater upside to going in May because we know we need the money, and better sooner than later. And I agree, we want more information about our finances, but we know we need more, not less. So we know that for sure. Yeah, it doesn't compute in my head. I mean, my mind just immediately dumps out the idea that going for this in May, it will be construed as a money grab, because I just think people know the difference. They're not paying for this. They know the difference. And, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there will be people who get confused and they think they are paying for it. I would be extremely hesitant to go in May for anything that would tax Selma County voters. I don't think I would, because we just did, but this is different. So, there will be people who, if we're going in May, we need to get organized, and we need to have some meetings with user groups, so we need to get busy for sure. If we're going in May, we need to get busy. And there will always be people who will say, well, you know, I didn't know about this, or I have something to say about this or whatever. There always will be, but we have to start that, you know, so we've started it with the cities and that's going well, but, you know, I need to get with the lodging owners, with short-term rental owners.
Right.
So-
These are conversations we're clear we need to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
In order to do this. And I think, for me, the concern is and maybe it doesn't have to, because maybe we can pull the stop cord at anywhere before a certain time. I don't, we talked about getting the ballot title ready in January. When do we submit that? When is the stop go moment about whether we are putting it on the ballot in May?
Your worst case final deadlines, public notice, January 28th, your first hearing, February 5th, your second hearing, February 19th. You approve on February 26th, you approve it going to the ballot. And then there's, election filing deadlines. Yeah, so.
So for clarity, we could do hearing 1, hearing 2, hearing 3, and determine we don't want to send it to the ballot right now in the condition it's in.
Not with the timeline I just gave you, because there's no room for a third hearing in there. The conservative timeline I gave you, starting in with the public notice, January 7th, there's some wiggle room in to have other hearings, but not with the one I just gave you.
What's the deadline just for the filing? Drop that date.
The filing deadline is the 28th of February, which puts your approval on February 26th.
Okay, so that answers my question, because we could do all of that pre-work up to that, and at February 26th, we could say, we've gotten information in this window of time, because simultaneously with all of this can be the stakeholder meetings, right? And the public hearings are where we may be able to suss out some of this political environment. Do people understand? Are we getting opposition? All of that can be sussed out and should be through the public hearing process, right? So in that sense, we have between now and February 26th, I think is the filing deadline, to basically get all of our ducks in a row, get all of our information, and make a final decision about whether this is folly and now we've created a huge opposition. And in fact, we do need to take a breath and do more work related to that, or this is going smoothly, we're ready, let's file, let's go. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, I would just mention that it may not look the best if, and I don't want to misunderstand what you're saying, so correct me if I don't want to take this where it's not going. Ordinance adoptions are going to be the most successful, in my opinion, if you have a solid draft and you know what you're talking about and you're moving it through the process. Of course, there's public input, there can be tweaks along the way, but that's the most successful path. Having this is kind of a loose draft, we're not sure about our messaging, if we're using the ordinance adoption hearing processes to figure things out, may look, may be less successful just because we don't look like we have our act together. So just some thoughts.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's helpful. Because I feel like the make tourists pay their fair share is sort of an inflammatory statement. It doesn't make me comfortable. So I feel like messaging wise, it's not my forte. And if an expert said that is it, I'd be like, okay. But so again, I'm looking for that piece that says, we're doing this right for the best chance of success, because if we have to get $35,000 to $45,000 to run a campaign, we know we're going to go talk to the very kind people who've helped us thus far in the radio bond, but trying to get that kind of money, I guess I want to make sure that to me is the upside downside that you talked about, Doug, is that we could easily, and I don't want to, we could easily,
Went to the well too many times.
yeah, we could commit and expend these funds, even if we get them and expend them, but not have done the appropriate groundwork to make it successful. And I think that's part of where my concern comes from, because Mary Faith, I completely share your concern that we don't have time to wait, that if we are looking at a $3 million shortfall per the budget committee meetings in fiscal year 26, 27, which is going to, or 25, 26, which is going to start on July 1 of 25, we don't have the luxury of time, because we do want to do everything we can to maintain every position and every service that we have. And I think we all share that commitment without question. And are we going to be successful? Are we setting ourselves up in the best possible way to be successful? And if we're not, then is it time to eat a little seed corn and set ourselves up to be successful? And I would prefer obviously not to eat any seed corn. Everyone is like, oh my God, that phrase, but it's stuck with us. And so I guess I'm looking at that February date, not like, hey, we're going to go loosey-goosey with an ordinance, but we haven't had time to, we could change our mind because we haven't yet had those stakeholder conversations. And maybe I'm touchier about that than most, having sat through the short-term rental advisory committee meetings for 18 months, with those folks right there in the room sharing with us their frustration, their anger, and their upset for that entire window of time, as well as the fact that we did put caps on short-term rentals. We are looking at how that market is shaking out or adjusting. You know, I feel like those pieces are in motion, and I do feel like that's going to be brought back to us as part of this, and we need to have good answers for that. So I have a lot of.
Yeah, so what I'm not hearing at this point from the three of you is a disagreement on the proposed language.
I mean, the 15%.
Yeah, forget the timeline. Are you generally for the delta that it's the 80% to the sheriff's office, 10 to radio, and 10 to emergency management? And I know there would be a different commissioner in there when this decision gets made, but what I'm hearing is there's not a disagreement about that. So the ordinance itself, that's one piece to this. You're talking about concerns with campaigning and
Yes,
messaging.
Sam, thank you.
So if we're walking through the ordinance, that is what it is. You're going to talk about, if we're doing this is what we're doing, and you'll hear messaging yays and nays throughout that process that you likely won't be tweaking the ordinance itself.
Thank you. Yeah.
So to
Right.
take back a little bit what I said earlier, it doesn't sound like that we don't know what we're doing is really an issue, because you're good with the draft language, provided somebody doesn't come in. So maybe that's less of an issue. And maybe you just kind of keep that, you know, in the back of your mind, that you're watching and listening for these things and trying to craft your message. And if it looks like you're not going to be able to, that's why you pull the plug.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to ask and what I was trying to get at, because I agree. I think there is agreement that transient lodging tax increase is one of the tools that we know we want to use. And I think, you know, unless the sheriff's office really, you know, wants to say timeout, I'm really not okay with that. And I'm not going to, you know, I'm going to have to speak against it or something on that front, which I don't think I heard. I think I heard him say that he has concerns and that he doesn't want that to be the lead message. You know, so I mean, I think as long as we don't have that going against us, we'll hear more, we'll learn more, we'll know if our message is right and the time is right for this particular ordinance.
Wasn't there an 80, 10, 10 split?
Yes.
Okay, and that's still what we're talking about.
Yes.
So
So we really haven't changed.
okay,
Yeah.
then that's good. And that's the message. You know, the messaging, in my mind, is relatively simple. People now know, or a good many of them, many of the voters know, that there are some shortfalls in the county. That's been on the front page more than once. So they know that, and now they're taking a positive step to ask those who come and place a burden upon the entire county and some of the cities as well to pay some more to help with that burden. That's a true story, and it's simple. And whether the 80 or 20 and all of that, I don't think voters drill down that much. They say, oh yeah, this guy's coming in and they're bringing their motorhomes with them or their brand new car. Let's have them pay a little more. And then the story that we've told all along is we're going to backfill and we're going to get a portion of it from this. This is a very viable option that turned out to be number one. That's why they're looking at it now. There'll be more to follow, but this one is paid by other people and relieves the burden. And you keep it, you know, the KISS keep it simple, stupid. I mean, I learned that many years ago. It's maybe not the right thing to say because voters are not at all stupid. But the more you dig it into the weeds, the more people say, the heck with it. I'm not, gonna, here they go again. Just say the voters, now we're asking you to have the visitors help us dig out of this hole.
I do think they're gonna wanna know where it's gonna go, because if they think it's just going into the general fund hole, I think it would be a hard stop, even if they aren't paying, paying for it, but
Always.
yeah. And I think it's helpful to say that it's going to these
Well, part of that,
causes.
this was- emergency management was one of the 10%, right? And so people understand that we're at risk for all kinds of things, flooding and the big one and all of that. And we're going to enhance that a little bit because other people are going to help pay for it. I mean, there's some stories to be told there that are very logical and truthful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But to Sheriff Brown's point, we aren't going to be able to rely on that messaging from that community like we did for the radio bond, which I appreciate and I understand. And so that's just part of our messaging, that's not blasted out on all the cards that you're sending in the mail.
Yeah.
It's
It
going.
would have to be either professionally crafted or, considerable thought. But at the same time, you're not writing an essay, you're writing a paragraph.
Right. And I don't think we would have to spend 35 or 40,000. I just don't think that we have to go to the extent that we went with the radio bond, because that was such a heavy lift and so important that I just think we won't have to invest as much in this campaign.
Josh,
Probably true, but there's no way to know. So, do you want to go after somebody with a 22 or a BB gun or a 30-06?
Jeez, Doug.
Maybe they should better quit using some of these analogies.
That one might not have been a good one. And yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I do, Sarah.
I just want to clarify, on the record to everybody, why I actually am not a fan of the language of 80% to the sheriff's office, 10% to those other places. And I'm going to, if that is the language you're going to go with, I'm going to stress very, very hard that it's clearly specified, not just in that, you're not, as Doug said, you're not writing an essay, you're writing a paragraph. People will automatically assume that the sheriff's office is getting an additional 80%, and they're going to expect more deputies, more action, more stuff, things that people have complained about the sheriff's office being unable to do because of staffing or, the size of the county. So it has to be, and when I'm asked about it, I will make it crystal clear, because I don't want to catch any heat for not upping our game when the public would believe we're going to get 80%. That's the problem I have. And I mentioned to Mary Faith in our meeting what happened in Josephine County, and I'm not going to take any part in anything similar to what happened in Josephine County. So it needs to be absolutely crystal clear and message that this is not an additional 80%. And there's no additional help to the sheriff's office with this designation of 80%. I will be making that clear to everybody that this is only a trade-off. We gain no benefit, and I know that the argument is, or the opinion is, well, that's 80% of TLT that is dedicated to your budget and it can't be touched. We've got dedicated money from contracts and other things that come in. We still have to come in front of the board. And as I mentioned, to be very blunt, beg for the rest of our money. We have to fight for it. We have to beg to make our thing whole. It's usually slashed. So even with this 80% being dedicated to the sheriff's office, we gain nothing, because we still have to come in and ask for or justify the additional $6, $7, $8, $10 million as whatever our budget is. So I don't want the public thinking that the sheriff's office is going to get an additional 80%, which, unless explained and clapped out perfectly, they will think that that's what it is, which is exactly what happened in Josephine County, and expect our level of service to increase, and then we're not able to deliver that. I don't want to catch any heat for that. I understand completely and respect the fact that this is your guys' decision. I have an opinion, I have input and stuff, and thankfully you guys do listen to it. But if you guys make this decision to move forward, I respect the fact that it's your decision and you guys can move forward with it. But please, please understand that people will think that this is an additional 80% and the sheriff's office is going to increase their patrols and increase their level of service unless it is explicitly explained that this is only an offset. It's only an offset. So
Yeah,
that's,
thank you.
and that's my big concern. And
Yeah, thank you. We will be clear about that, Josh, and I have been clear about it when I've gone to city councils and talked to cities about it. I've been clear about the county's heading into a budget shortfall, and we want to ensure that we can continue to fund current service levels, that we're using this to shore up the general fund so that we don't have to make any reductions, so that we can do what we're doing, we can continue to do and offer what we're doing and offering now. And everybody, the whole room nods like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because to Doug's point, anybody who's paying attention does know that we have budgetary concerns and we're heading into a shortfall. So yes, we'll be very explicit about that.
And as you said, and I guess I'm confirming this and making sure this is the board's, like you said, that the messaging you're giving already when you go to city councils is, you know, there's a expected budget shortfall and you're trying to shore up the general fund. We're not saying trying to shore up the sheriff's office, because the sheriff's office is just a part of the general fund. Is that correct? Shore up the general fund.
Well, shore up the general fund in order to pay for, yes, in order to
Okay.
continue to pay for current service levels.
Okay.
But also, I've said very clearly that the 80% would go into the sheriff's office budget as a revenue item. So, you know, what I think people will not support is if it's just going into the general fund and they think we're going to fritter it away.
So do you have any direction for staff?
So Paul, did you want to say anything before we go forward? You
Um,
turned your microphone on and off a couple of times.
Well, I
You've
just
been
want
very
to not opposed, one, to getting more money out of the CLT.
Oh, I'm not suggesting that at all.
And I'm not opposed to the proposed ordinance. either. I have other concerns, and I can share them offline as well. I shared several of them here, but I have other concerns. I do understand we need the money. I get it. Again, I haven't heard anybody say what we're talking about with the timeline. I just want more discussion. We have other things on the table. So if we're gonna do
Timeline,
timeline meeting, we do this, we go to the voters, we ask for it, they're gonna say yes because of all the reasons we're saying here. I believe that we've had no problem, and I have no problem doing that. The other timeline I'm saying is we have other things that we have identified as ways of making money, and we haven't discussed the possibility of when that would happen, because we're doing a lot. We're spending a lot of new money on new positions and dividing things up, and we're spending a lot of money on really important stuff. Again, the goalpost keeps moving, so we get this money, and then come September, now we're like, well, we need more because we spent more because we're building and restructuring, and now we need to go back to them, and now we have to look at doing PUD or some other things. I guess my thing is, I get it. I understand that the urgency felt. I'm looking forward to some more explanations. I can ask questions about certain money and funds that I see being moved. I just want to make sure that I am fully aware of the shortfalls we're running into. And I'm fully aware of a lot of the things we identified. The rate case being a big one, right? Raising our rates and our fees that we haven't done for decades. And we're playing catch up now on things that we probably should have done decades ago. And now we're finally sitting here going, we need to do this. We're charging the same as we did in 1990 or 2010 or whatever. So that's an option. When is that going to happen? See, for me to understand this is fair to go to them. I don't want us, we're going to be talking about this again in 4 months. And then in my first term as a commissioner, we've gone to the trough 4 or 5 times. And that's what I'm saying. Where's the timeline is a timeline spread out over 3 years, 2 years. Because we're gonna have to do all of the things, or many of the things that you identified in the budget roundtable. We're gonna have to do many things. In addition to raising revenue, we're gonna have to increase fees and camping fees and all that stuff we've already talked about. That's why when we were talking about that, I thought we should have done all the parks fees should have been up, not just the one or whatever they worked on. Like, let's just do it. Let's just start making our case early. I know it's gonna take time. That's the timeline for me. When is that time gonna happen so that we can look at our constituents and say, thank you for the $26 million. Sorry, here we are again, but you're not paying just the residents or owners of houses that have short-term rentals are paying. I'm afraid we're gonna say, by the way, your electric bill is gonna go up $10, which they probably should have a franchise fee since the cities have franchise fees. But you understand my concern is we do this and then when are we gonna do that?
Mhm.
And I wish we were having that discussion and maybe we can in the coming months
Yeah,
and identify like the reality
I
of.
think we do need a plan, for sure.
That's why I'm saying the financial plan that we're waiting for. I didn't know
Exactly.
it's gonna be spring. So now that it's spring, I just want to know that my hesitation to May is that primarily, not going and asking for the money. Not that we need it or don't need it. We definitely need the money. I don't want to play, I don't want to stack the deck and say we're doing this and then we're going to do something else in July because we didn't think about it before. So I just want to make sure, go forward as you feel like you want to go. And if I'll do what I'm doing now. And if I agree, then I'll say it. But if I don't, I'll voice my concerns. But that's the big one is keep going back within a year. I don't want to do
It's
that.
almost inevitable that we're gonna keep going back if we do this, but this isn't, I keep hearing the term going to the trough, but I don't think this is going to the trough for Tillamook County voters, for Tillamook County residents. This is raising taxes somebody else is paying, which is different. But we will go back if we go for a PUD franchise fee. We will go back, for rate cases. That's,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But what I'm saying is we don't have a timeline for that. So that, I think I'm explaining myself. It's just.
You are, we just don't know, Paul, and it's really frustrating.
We
is what
don't
I'm
know, and I
hearing,
don't
is we
expect
just
it to
don't
be.
know. Yeah.
That's my concern here. Because I agree with you. It's still taxing people that live here and have businesses here, and it's gonna hurt people. And the PUD thing's gonna hurt people. And I just want to make sure that we're having a discussion that we certainly hope we don't have to come back in 2 weeks and say, by the way, now we're raising this bill. So I think it's a fair concern that I have, but I don't want you to slow the process down.
Right.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
I feel like that's our catch 22, right? Is that we would all like to have all that information before we made any decision.
Well, just
But-
talking about it makes
Yeah.
you realize where my head is.
Yeah.
So that you can be
Totally.
conscious that,
Totally.
oh, I don't think I want to raise another fee in 3 months after we do this. I just want us to be conscious that we have this thing coming and we're going to get excited when we see that we can raise this much money doing this and this much money doing this. And then we just,
And the good news is, Paul, you'll be sitting up here for every
understand.
one of those conversations, being able to make sure that we're all understanding completely what you're thinking. And I don't think what you're thinking is that different than what we're thinking. We just feel that in our chairs where we are today, the urgency is
I
here.
agree, the urgency is there.
And that for us, we have been sitting, as Commissioner Bell said, over the last year, trying to figure this out, and that we have to begin the steps toward an action now. Totally agree. We're all going to be chewing on who have we asked, when have we asked, how have we asked,
Why
how
did we
do,
wait?
how do we
Why
move,
haven't we done this
why
yet?
haven't we done this in the past? How do we move forward in a way that is responsible, respectful, and cares for our community and our service needs in the best possible combined way? So we hear you. Yeah, we hear your concern.
And I hope that we'll be working on this together. I heard you say, I'm gonna be out in front of this, so I'll hold you to that. Hope we'll be working on this together. Okay, do we need anything else on this right
I'd
now?
like to see this conversation continue next week,
Okay,
only because there's some very short timelines over,
True.
not talking months, we're talking weeks here. And so to push this off and then it, comes up again whenever, if the decision is for May, this needs to be put to bed here pretty quickly.
I agree. Let's talk about it every week until.
So
yeah.
right-
And have this again, and then maybe, we'll say, pros and cons, right and left, or however you want to do it and say, okay, this makes sense, and the risk outweighs the risk of not doing it or something like that. And see if we can get where we're going. And
Well, and I think we're somewhat there. So I know that Commissioner Bell is ready to move forward with this for May. And I know that I'm ready to move forward with drafting the ordinance and moving ourselves toward this May position, recognizing that the intent is to go in May. And that the only thing in my mind that stops us from going in May is if the ancillary meetings we are having during this process lead us to understand that there's something we haven't prepared for or planned for that is suddenly in our face. We have a public revolt. We have, we do talk to our experts as we're messaging and discover that they're saying, this isn't going to fly right now, and here's why. I mean, I think it would have to be something pretty extreme to stop us from an intended May approach. It could be that we get that report from the financial people on February 20th and go, oh my gosh, we could actually get the full $3 million that we need in our future by doing this and not doing that. Then they would conflict with each other, to Paul's concern. So, I mean, that's the only thing I can see that would stop us. So I think we have to move full speed ahead with our planning for the 70% per, the conversations that we've already had, another one that Paul's brought up. Having Rachel go ahead and let's prepare the ordinance. Let's do the pieces. Let's roll, right? I mean, I think there is a meeting for the cities, but we think the cities are all on board. So what exactly do you need from us, Rachel? You started to say you were looking for guidance.
The first thing is direction for me to proceed with completing the draft. And that being, we've already sorted through the 1% in cities, and all of what that means is the 80, 10, and 10. And I've had plans to put in, when we got to this point, the specificity about it being not an offset.
Being an offset.
Sorry, being an offset, yes. So
Being an
like
offset.
those, that's been in the works for a long time. I'm just waiting to work with Bill on finalizing that language. So I'm hearing you want me to finalize the draft language.
Please.
So then the next question is, not sure when that would be ready, but the next deadline, so to get the public notice for January 7th, puts sending the notice to the headlight sometime the week of the 30th of December, and with the holidays, I'm not sure of the timeline. So in theory, by the week of Christmas, you all have looked at that either individually and given me a thumbs up, or at the board briefing on the 18th. That's sending the notice. There's that week lag of when it actually is posted. So that, if that timeline feels okay. And then the next question is the meeting with the cities. Are we trying to do that on the 18th of December?
I haven't talked to Nan yet. So Nan asked us for something and I haven't talked to her yet.
Okay.
So I'll do it. Mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that may be rushed at this point to try to have them come on, even if you talk to her on the 18th with the holidays and everything.
So it was totally clear from her email about what they wanted. So I need to talk to her.
Okay.
Do we have cities that are still pushing back? Do we know?
It sounds like there were some questions, but generally everyone's supportive.
Okay.
So the next, so you have the December 18th briefing and the December 8th briefing. Actually,
11 and 18. Right.
11 is the budget committee meeting.
So
It was going into January, but so something else to think about, after this is noticed with the draft ordinance, you should not be convening these public meetings to talk about it outside of the hearing.
So we could talk to stakeholders because that's the 70%, right? But not or we can't do that either.
You just shouldn't be talking about it in a group outside of the hearing. So from now until it's noticed, fine. But after that, I mean, you can have the one-off conversations, but as far as having these workshops with the board or between the board and other groups, cities, to talk about what it means, we've kind of ran up against that in the past, and Bill's advised not doing that because you're in the ordinance hearing process now. That's what the hearings are for. So I'd forgotten about that piece. So just something to think about with regard to noticing. If this is going to be publicly noticed January 7th, from that point through the hearing process, your discussion should be during the actual hearings. Again, not that you can't have one-offs, but even that might be a little.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to proceed with the draft, and we can certainly talk about this on the 18th and just check in on where we are.
And maybe Nan can join us on the 18th if we can't have the cities to join us, or
She is actually scheduled to be here to talk about the extra money that she wanted to put toward the grants. So
Good.
she's already scheduled to be here on the 18th.
good. So then maybe in your conversation with Nan.
Yeah.
We can, because I think that's a piece that would be very important to tie up before we start having ordinance hearings, is that we don't have any particular cities who are
Right.
still saying, oh, no way.
Right.
And if there are, maybe it's not the group meeting. It's
Right, maybe it's the one-offs with those individuals if that's where we are.
Okay.
And so do you think, I realize Bill's not with us, but in terms of just
Joel's
meeting.
here.
Oh, Joel's here. In terms of meeting with the stakeholders about the 70%, because that was the other set of groups, which really is not about, I mean, the hearing is not about the 70%, right? I mean, the ordinance isn't calling out the 70%. The 70% is a byproduct of the ordinance. If you're looking at through the ordinance ones, not saying that 70% is purely a byproduct. It's obviously something else we want to work with very carefully. But is there, I guess I'm thinking about those meetings and wondering if we can be talking to short-term rental owners, operators, et cetera, even though the ordinance is on the table, given that it's not it doesn't deal with information inside the ordinance.
That's a
Joel, is that,
Joel question.
I see you're with us, and was that enough garbled specificity to understand the question?
Yes, Commissioner Scar, I understand it, and we can talk in a lot more detail about this offline. But just generally, I do agree with Rachel. It's better to err on the side of caution when it comes to, the point where you've actually started the ordinance process, because those public hearings are for, both decision making, but also deliberations. And deliberations has a pretty broad definition that really encompasses information gathering. So, I do think it's better to err on the side of caution there,
Okay, thank you.
but we can certainly talk more offline if you'd like.
Yeah, just trying to figure out with our timeline.
Yeah.
If there's a way that we can be talking with those stakeholders, because we're going to essentially be in the ordinance process from the last week of December when that hits the notice until early February, mid-February, and then we're going to be on the submitting for the ballot.
Yeah, so essentially you have the month of January is the hearings under this timeline. And then after that, you're messaging, assuming you adopt it, then you're messaging and talking about how you're going to spend the money. I mean, that's an appropriate time to be talking with the stakeholders, but yeah, that's after
Okay.
the
thank you.
fact. But you're getting the extra money in the 70%, and you have a start of a plan of ideas that you could start spending it on, finalizing the plan after you've adopted the ordinance and you're preparing for the ballot. I think that's appropriate.
We got to go to the party.
Yeah.
Oh, is it 4 already? It is. Look at that.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Excellent discussion. I appreciate it very much. And I hope I'll see you in mere moments at the Tillamook County Fine Art Museum. We are adjourned at 3:57.